Avirodhitaya karma na vidyam vinivartayet vidya vidyam nihantyeva tejastimira sanghavat. Avirodhitaya karma na vidyam vinivartayet vidya vidyam nihantyeva tejastimira sanghavat. Avirodhitaya karma. Avirodhitaya means it is not opposed to ignorance. Action cannot destroy ignorance as it is not opposed to ignorance. Na avidya. Knowledge alone destroys ignorance as light destroys dense darkness. Tejas timira sanghavat. Timira sanghavat means as deep darkness. Tejaha is light. Just as light destroys dense darkness, knowledge destroys ignorance. Action cannot destroy ignorance as it is not opposed to ignorance. Now, one is to understand it in its superficial sense. The mere statement you read, you say, yes, sir, very logical, very simple words. The greatness of these men, they speak so beautiful, simple, we all understand. But after that, we don't know what it means. What is the implication? Am I able to practice what they are saying? This is the second question. So let's not worry about that. I understood, understand. Now, what are they saying? Now, please remember the theme of the text. We've actually got into the text, having gone over the invocation of the first verse. We have gone to the text where you'll clearly see the style or the methodology of the text. Remember, in the first introduction, I said the text uses the methodology of, if you don't remember upma. Upma, you remember, you will get the correct answer. The difference between upma and the concept is upama. Only one alphabet A add pannu. All that. So if some of you don't get Tinkima, if you don't remember what is the methodology, remember upma. Upma and upama. Upama means comparison. So you find every verse there is an example or a simile or a metaphor he gives just to convey the main theme through an example. So just as knowledge destroys ignorance, just like light dispels darkness. That's the comparison, the parallel. Now, how is it that light destroys darkness? It is an antidote. As simple as that. Light is an antidote for darkness. Exactly the same way. If you want to dispel ignorance, you need only jnanam. Everything else is useless. You may do many things. It is of no use. So the antidote for darkness is light. And how dense we're talking about. Imagine, you have gone into a cave. A cave so deep into the mountains, perhaps nobody has ever explored that. You go deep into the recesses of the mountains. Pitch darkness. You went with your searchlight, with a torchlight. There's not a ray of light. But the moment you struck the first matchstick, or the moment you switched on a light, how long did it take for the light to dispel darkness? Instantaneously, isn't it? Is there any reference to how long the cave has been left in darkness? Is there reference to how dense is the darkness? No reference. That is the beauty of this wisdom. How long have you been ignorant? How foolish have you lived your life thus far? There is no reference to it. The moment you embrace this wisdom, the moment you embrace this knowledge, the beauty of this knowledge is instantly dispels your ignorance, just like light dispels darkness. Because it is the antidote. But if you come to your house has been locked up for a long time, The moment you walk in, let's say you have lived overseas for 3 months, you come back to your home, everything has been locked up and sealed tight. And you come home, you feel everything is very stuffy, it's suffocating, it's sultry, isn't it? What would you do the first thing? You open up all your doors and windows. Why do you open up all the windows and doors? Why don't you switch on light? All the lights are switched on to get rid of the sultriness. Would the sultriness go? Annapurnama, try panlama. Light alla, we'll switch on light. Would the sultriness in the house go off?
No, Guruji. It needs ventilation, fresh air to drive away the sultriness.
It needs that fresh air to drive away sultriness. Why? It's because it is the antidote. It is the antidote. So we need to understand it. Now, with reference to getting rid of spiritual ignorance, he says action cannot destroy ignorance. It's a very, very powerful statement he's making. Avirodhitaya karma na avidya vinivartayet. Now, what is it talking when he says action cannot destroy ignorance? Now, what is the term action? Do you understand here? What do you understand by action? Maniji, A.K. Maniji, do you know what he's talking of action here?
Action, yeah. Your money power?
Ayyo. Inna sir, why would Adi Shankaracharya be thinking of money at that point? No, I am thinking of money now, but Adi Shankaracharya ji may not be thinking of money. I am thinking of MANIU. You are saying MONEY, la? Correct, Dane?
Correct,
No.
Guruji.
But action doesn't necessarily mean material resources here. No.
As Raji Madam put it, your spiritual thing.
When did Raji Madam, what did you say, Raji Madam?
She has come in the chat box, I could gather that.
Oh,
She
chat
has given
box.
a hint.
Such a wise knowledge I missed, sir. Correct, thanks, sir. Wise people, sir.
Exactly.
I am becoming wiser because of association with wise people, sir. I am blessed, sir. Enna Raji Madam, can you please explain, madam?
I am an expert in copying things,
Sir, I am also, sir. I am only copying what these great men have said. Yes, Raji Madam.
Hari Om Guruji. Last week we discussed all the spiritual practices, so many of them. Is he referring action to those kind of spiritual practices?
Actually, it's not. He's being very
Only.
specific. He's being very specific here. You could be generic, but if you are being very specific to what he's attacking, in fact, he's directly attacking those who are caught up in those spiritual practices. In fact, action here refers to performing the mechanical ritual and practices. The mere superstition, the mere mechanical rituals, which is a part of karma kanda. So performing merely physical activities. And Adi Shankaracharya, the very founder of the Shankara movement, is attacking. And if you look at the acharyas, the current monastic institution of the Shankaracharya movement, the 4 institutions and their ashramas, which is established. Today, what they are doing? They're just following the mere mechanical rituals. What a disparity from what the Guru envisioned and what it has landed up in. Mere rituals, orthodoxity to the core, undoubtedly very pure and divine, but that will not give you salvation. Here the Jagat Guru is saying himself, action cannot give you, will not give you liberation. And yet everybody is caught up in the mere ritualistic practices. We chant a mantra, isn't that a ritual? Religiously, I chant the mantra Om 3 times, isn't that a ritual? I put a tilak on my forehead, is it not a ritual? That by itself means nothing. It doesn't give you liberation. So each one of us are performing some rituals. So it's not that you should drop the rituals. So what is he attacking here? Subramaniam is here. So what is the message here for you and me? In fact, you must understand, I'm not misreading here, nor should we misread. Spirituality cannot be without ritual.
Yes.
As I said, it's an integral part of sadhana. As I said, we won't perform a ritual of chanting. At the end of it, we do a mantra. So throughout the day, you could be doing various rituals. But then what is the message here, sir?
Like you mentioned at the very outset, Guruji, this is a means to an end. You always have to keep that in mind. Whatever I am doing, like putting a bhasma on my forehead, that must just remind me that this body is going to become an ash. Just that's all. Similarly, whatever rituals we do, that must all lead us to that knowledge which is beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect and all these things. Going towards the real knowledge. So all the rituals, whatever we do, if we do that with understanding, knowing why we do what we do,
Yep.
that is when I think we'll be able to be on the right path. Hari Om.
Perfect, sir. Very true, very true. So you must understand the limitation that this will not give you that. But you may have to do it with the understanding that I do it for a limited purpose. Beyond that, so the message is be detached to the rituals. Don't be obsessed. You're obsessed to it. I hardly have come across someone who is detached to his ritualistic practices. They're obsessed to it. You do not know where you have attached to it. The moment you have attached to it, you have lost the beauty of its purpose. If I am performing the ritual mechanically, I don't understand what I'm doing. I know people, they go into the prayer puja room, ritualistically, mechanically, they perform the ritual, but their minds and bosoms and their hearts are full of negativity and pessimism and hatred. And what is the use of this prayer or worship? They have such a negative mindset outside to life. And yet you may be going through the ritual of puja and prayer. I can't understand. What is the purpose? Everything has a significance. If you are able to take away the deeper import, and sir, if I were to give you a ball of pistachio, what would you do? Don't you break away the shell and take the nut? Everything comes with a packaging, my dear. Take the essential and get rid of the non-essential. Then only it serves the purpose. But spiritual practitioners do not know what is essential, what is non-essential. Therefore, they get caught up in the non-essentials. Karma is essential, but that by alone will not give you liberation. What gives you liberation is knowledge of the self. Remember, knowledge of the self alone gives you liberation. Why? Because that alone is antidote. Anything else you do will not give you the desired result. Let's be clear. Now, if you have to go a little technical beyond the obvious which the language conveys, why is it that it's like, the comparison of what I'm trying to say, the deeper connotation is like a swimmer, someone who manages to swim, he jumps into the pool and it's a nuisance for others because he's splashing and dashing. There is no beauty or charm in his grace in swimming. There are people who swim like that. There are people who literally, they slide like a fish, they swim, they are just so effortless. They're not even ripple created. And then there are people who go into the deep dive, deep sea. So you can approach this text or this verse from a superficial, or you just go deep into that bowels. So if you just go a little deep into why does it say that action cannot destroy ignorance? Now, action is performed by the body. Just be mindful of what I'm saying. Action is performed by the body. The action which the body performs is emanated by the mind, which consists of thoughts. Now, the thoughts that are triggered to your action, thoughts come from vasanas, and vasanas is a product of ignorance. Are you all with me? Actions are performed by the body. And what prompts your body to act is your thoughts and desires. Thoughts and desires stem from the vasanas, and vasanas is a product of ignorance of self. In fact, you can very safely say vasanas is ignorance of the self. And ignorance of self is avidya. So how can avidya get rid of avidya? How can avidya give you vidya? It cannot. How can ignorance give you? How can ignorance take care of ignorance? How can ignorance give you enlightenment? Can it? No, it cannot. Anything gross cannot give you subtle. Remember this. Action is gross. Liberation is subtle. Gross cannot give you subtle. आशामा, आज समझ रहे हैं? समझ में आ रहा है? आपसे दोबारा पूछे क्या बोले हमने? Are you following, ma?
Yes. Vasanas cannot give you, cannot dispel ignorance.
Action cannot dispel ignorance.
Yeah.
And actions come from?
Actions come from thoughts.
Yes. And thoughts come from?
Desires, vasanas, and vasanas from ignorance.
Vasana is ignorance. So how can, isn't it? So how can ignorance dispel ignorance?
Yeah.
Cannot. Therefore you need, so that's one point. Secondly, it is gross. Action is gross. Realization is subtle.
Give you subtle.
It cannot give you gross, cannot give you subtle. So action is always a product of ignorance. Therefore, action is always a product of ignorance. Therefore, actioner cannot dispel ignorance. Action is ignorance. It is not an antidote, it is ignorance. So how can it dispel? It is gross. So how can finite give you infinite? It cannot. Oh, sir, then how about selfless actions? We should perform, Sai, I think earlier was saying charitable actions, unselfish actions, selfless actions. Is it not going to help me evolve? Yeah, it is going to help you evolve. It is going to take you from a certain state from lower to the higher, but that's all. It can't give you direct liberation. So at some stage, you will have to bring in the knowledge. So knowledge alone is the antidote for ignorance. So it is the apprehension of the reality that removes ignorance, nothing else. Apprehension means it is the very knowing of the self that gets rid of ignorance. This is the technical conclusion why you say action cannot destroy ignorance. So the takeaways from the verse: Remember, you got to be detached to the rituals. They are an integral part of your spiritual sadhana, but understand its limitation, be detached to it. Don't be obsessed by your ritualistic practices. Oh, Navaratri, I only eat 1 meal a day. Oh, it is Navaratri, I don't do this. Oh, it is this day, I don't do that. No, you can, but you are a slave of your own creation. It's like me chaining myself in my own limitation. What is the objective of it? You got to ask yourself. I'm not against it, but you got to understand what is the rituals. You find from morning to night, it is all rituals and rituals and rituals. That is not going to liberate you. In fact, binding yourself in it. Self-inflicted bondage. You've got to learn to break these shackles. So learn to be detached to them. Thirdly, action cannot destroy ignorance because action is a product of ignorance. Vasana is ignorance, and vasana is expressed as thoughts, desires, actions. So actions cannot. Fourthly, we said action is gross, and what you're seeking is subtle. What you're seeking is liberation, subtle. So gross cannot give you subtle. All right?